hate when they do. I hate when the caps do this. Don't you hate when the caps do this? Welcome back to DwreckTV, everybody. This is Dwreck. And today I'm going to be listing my revised list of my top 10 Super Nintendo games. I know I've already spoke about the Super Nintendo before on that 2-hour long video, but I was kind of, like I said, I was incoherent with that one. So this one's the more revised, more straightforward and to the point countdown of my top 10 favorite Super Nintendo games of all time. And like I've also said before, the Super Nintendo was definitely a huge part of my upbringing. It was definitely one of my favorite systems of all time, and especially during the time when the Sega Genesis was around at the same time. So that was like the whole thing of the Super Nintendo against the Sega Genesis. But within my circle of friends and circle of relatives, both systems were beloved and played with and everything. But like I've always said, go visit. You want to play Sega Genesis? Go play at their house. They want to play Super Nintendo? They come to my house. So it was always that collaboration of both systems that always brought us together. But definitely, I played a lot of the Super Nintendo. I rented a lot of more games than I had games. But definitely a fun time, especially with my cousin Max and his brother Roy, and especially with Robert and Duke and my friends Steel City and everything, because we played this a lot. But before we get to the countdown of top 10, because doing this top 10 was definitely really tough, especially like having my reference from that last video, because I really did change some things up on this, and I did take some out. You want to know which ones those are? We'll find out. But before we get to the countdown, I want to list some honorable mentions. Some that I really wanted to talk about in the last one, but I'm going to do it right now. So here's some honorable mentions. Definitely Mario Paint. This was the second game that we had gotten. My dad got this for me and my younger sister. This was the first time we ever tried with a mouse on a video game, and it was actually really cool. I like drawing on it. I like coloring it. I like making the music sounds, especially the bug game. That was really fun. Very fun thing. I'm just going to blaze through. Another honorable mention is Primal Rage. My cousin Max and Roy rented this a lot, and I played it with them a lot, and it was a real fun fighting game, especially during the time with Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter was all of the rage and everything. Primal Rage was the rage. And another one that was good, another honorable mention is Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time. Now, like I've said before, Turtles in Time came out during a time when the Ninja Turtles were they were kind of plateaued and just about to be just going down in popularity. So I do remember seeing this at a Babbage's once, and I thought, wow, Ninja Turtles 4, oh, I gotta play that. But never really came around to get it. I did get this off eBay. I think it's a repo copy, but it still works. But definitely Ninja Turtles in Time. I really like it, but it was just during a time when the Turtles were just going down in popularity. Another honorable mention is Super Mario Kart. One of my neighbors had this game, and we played it a lot, and I really enjoyed Mario Kart. The Super Mario Kart. And I was so excited seeing Yoshi and Toad in the same game. So that was a big deal. And also this was during the time when that's the same friend down the street. He also got me to watch the Super Mario Brothers movie. So I owe that to him. And another one, this one will always be on everybody's top 10 list, but I never played this initially during that time. I wasn't until I found it at a pawn shop, and you're probably gonna hate me for this. It's Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. I never played this when I was a kid. I know a lot of people are going to be killing me. How can you not play Zelda, A Link to the Past, man? Well, sorry, I didn't know that many people that had played it. But it wasn't until like a couple years later, my friend Steel City, he told me about it. And then when I finally found it, I played it and like, this is actually really good. It's very good game. I wish I could have put it in the top 10 list, but I just played a lot of good games during that time. And especially another one, this one, people are going to be hating on me for being an honorable mention and not playing initially, is Super Metroid. I didn't know too many people that play Super Metroid, and not even the first Metroid, to be quite honest. But when I found this at the pawn shop, and I played it, and I heard so many people were talking so highly about Super Metroid. And when I finally played it, like, I can understand the hype. I really do. It's a really good game. I really like it. But like I said, I never played it. And I got two more honorable mentions. This one is very obscure. I do remember reading this in Nintendo Power, and it's called Artie Lightfoot. I remember reading this in Nintendo Power, and I was thinking, I would really like to play this game. But I just never found it at Blockbuster, never found it at my local mom and pop rental stores. I found it off eBay, and when I finally played it, I was like, it's actually a pretty good game. Very tough, and it's very, gotta get some timing down, because his tail is like a pogo stick, and you have his little buddy with him as well, him. And you gotta go through the worlds and fight the big boss and everything, but very obscure game. If y'all ever get a chance to find Artie Lightfoot, I highly recommend it. It's definitely a hidden gem, and it's made by a company called Titus. Never heard any of the other games that they've made, but y'all should definitely check out Artie Lightfoot. And also, this was on my countdown initially, but I bumped it off for something else. And this was, it's very near and dear to me, is Rocko's Modern Life, Spunky's Dangerous Day. This was, like I've said before, this was one of my first instances of nerd rage, because I loved Rocko's Modern Life, and I've stated it before in my top, in my rankings for Nicktoons and everything, and even I did a review on this game and everything, and I even did a whole handy-dandy guide on how to improve the game, but definitely Rocko's Modern Life. It was on the top 10, but I took it off for something else, but it's one of the things where it's like, man, why did they make the game like this? But I made a whole rant about it, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but Rocko's Modern Life, Spunky's Dangerous Day, despite my my complaints about it, is still near and dear to me. So now, with that being said, let's get into Dwreck's top 10 Super Nintendo Entertainment System games.
Suddenly the sky is a little clearer. The water is a little bluer. The road's a little bumpier. The jumps are harder. The level's deeper. The character's smarter. The sound is hotter. The graphics cooler. The secret's darker. The danger's fiercer. The challenge a whole lot tougher. And suddenly the world's a more exciting place to be. Super Mario World. It comes only as part of the system you are created for. The Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The next generation from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power. Super power.
And now, DwreckTV's Top 10 Super Nintendo Entertainment System games. Excellent! Number 10.
Killer Instinct. Killer Instinct was one of them fighting games that just reeked of awesomeness and just made you go, fuck yeah, with every character, every combo, and rocking out to every single soundtrack. My cousin Max used to rent this a lot. Me and him played this a lot, and my God. And especially during a time when Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat was all the rage, Killer Instinct was probably one of our most favorite fighting games out of all of them. I used to play, I like the Cinder, I like the Jago, I like the Orchid, and even Fulgore. We played pretty much every character. Yeah, we always liked beating up on Saberwolf. It was funny. But still, Killer Instinct, especially during that time, the music was great on it. The graphics were absolutely incredible. Like nothing you ain't ever seen before on the Super Nintendo. And not only that, the cartridge is black. When we saw this was like, dude, this is big. This is a big deal. You thought that freaking Legend of Zelda and a gold cartridge was holding royalty. We were holding awesomeness. Definitely Killer Instinct, one of my all-time favorites on the Super Nintendo, one of my favorite fighting games, and I'll never forget it. Definitely a very fun time.
Number 9.
Number 9, I added this into this countdown because out of all the other games I played, I was like, this game just felt like a big deal. And that is Star Fox. When I first seen Star Fox, I was like, what is this? This looks incredible. I got to play this. Especially seeing it on the commercial and then actually playing it, it felt like a big deal. Like, the graphics on it were, it blew everybody away with the Super FX chip and everything. There was nothing like this kind of game. Especially it introduced everybody to the Star Fox team, like Fox McCloud and Falco, Peppy, and Slippy. All the stuff, all the missions that you go on and everything, and going through outer space, and especially like seeing it in first-person view and everything. This game was absolutely incredible. The graphics on it were absolutely phenomenal. Even though it's kind of primitive to today's standards and everything, but in 1993, Star Fox was it, and it reminded me of a videotape that my dad had gotten us. It was called Beyond the Mind's Eye. It was a videotape that he found at a Radio Shack, and it was like a showcase video of like early CG and the capabilities of what CG can do. And there was like 10 segments on it, and a lot of them, even for the early 1990s, that was incredible. And seeing Star Fox like that, this was like something out of Beyond the Mind's Eye. That was incredible. Definitely Star Fox, absolutely one of my favorites. Even though the graphics, like I said, are kind of primitive to compare to today's standards, but in '93, that was absolutely amazing.
Number 8.
This one I played a lot of, and I also played it through my cousins Max and Roy as well, and that is Tiny Toon Adventures Buster Busts Loose. I consider this a true sequel to the NES version, but definitely Buster Busts Loose just took the Tiny Toons to the Super Nintendo, and it was absolutely amazing. The graphics on it were very colorful, very bright. The controls were really good. The characters looked absolutely incredible on the Super Nintendo. But definitely, Buster Busts Loose was definitely one of my top favorite and most played games on the Super Nintendo. You play Buster Bunny, you go through all the worlds. You start off in Acme University, then you go to Wild West, then you go to a Spooky Mansion, and then you're playing American football, which was like one of the toughest parts in the whole game, but then it started getting a little easy. Then you go through the sky, you go through a Star Wars setting, and you fight the final boss is Duck Raider. It's actually pretty good. Really good game, and especially the mini games are really fun too. So if you ever get a chance, pick up Buster Busts Loose. This is the true sequel to Tiny Toon Adventures on the NES, and I'll never forget it. Absolutely one of my all-time favorites.
Number 7.
Mega Man X. You want to talk about the graphical and generational leap from the original Nintendo to the Super Nintendo? Look no further than Mega Man. From games like Mega Man 2 going into Mega Man X, it was absolutely fantastic. Everything was just going on all cylinders. Like the graphics to it, the sound effects, the controls, everything about Mega Man X just was leaps and bounds over the original. You play Mega Man X, there's also new characters like Zero and a new main villain, Sigma, and you go around taking out the Mavericks, and you gain their powers to take out the other enemies, and then you go on to fight Sigma in the end. And what's great about Mega Man X is the soundtrack. The music in Mega Man X, and especially throughout just about every Mega Man game, has an awesome rockin' soundtrack. But definitely Mega Man X on the Super Nintendo was just absolutely rockin', and it's the kind of music that you listen to all the time and you never get tired of. Definitely Mega Man X, absolutely one of the best games on the Super Nintendo, and definitely in my top favorites.
Number 6.
Speaking of another one of my all-time favorites, and that has to be Yoshi's Island. When I first heard of Yoshi's Island, and I started reading about it in Nintendo Powers, I was like, I gotta play this game. I absolutely have to play this game. I practically had to beg my dad to get this game. Like, Dad, I gotta play this game. Dad, I gotta play this game. He's like, okay. But then, I had gotten the game on, around Christmas '95, and I played the ever-loving crap out of it. Before I played the game, I was reading about it in Nintendo Power. I read it so much in Nintendo Power that it gave me a migraine. That's how much I wanted to play this game. And when I finally played it, I played it for freaking hours on end. I absolutely love this game. Despite the annoyance of Baby Mario's whining and everything, I can forgive that. I can look past all that. But other than that, Yoshi's Island, the graphics on it were absolutely incredible. It looked like a drawing, like color and pencil drawing and everything. And the controls on it were really good. I like how Yoshi can float. He uses the eggs to shoot the enemies and everything, and going through all the worlds, find the bosses and everything. The bosses were actually pretty cool in this game. I'm not gonna lie. Everything about the game was absolutely great. The music was very great, and it's one of them games where the music it starts off like with a walk in the park type music. Then when you get to the bosses, it's like it gets your heart racing, gets your blood pumping and everything. And then by the time you get to the final boss, it's freaking rocking, and you're like, oh my goodness, like, is this the same game? Oh my god. The final boss in this game, the music of it is absolutely like, whoa! And then after that, it just goes back to the mellow music. You want to talk about a bipolar type game? My goodness, Yoshi's Island is just that. But definitely, Yoshi's Island, absolutely one of my all-time favorites. The music on it is absolutely great. Everything from the mellow sounding music to the rockin' sound of the final boss. My goodness. You never played Yoshi's Island? Y'all better get with the program. That was absolutely one of the best games.
Number 5!
Oh boy. I had to make some adjustments to this one, but definitely the next up is a sequel to one of my all-time favorites, and that is Earthworm Jim 2. As much as I love Earthworm Jim 1, Earthworm Jim 2, as much as I like this one, I played this one a lot. This one was definitely a change of pace from the first one. As the first one was more like a run and gun, this one was like a run and gun, but also it had a lot of like different types of gameplay mechanics. First you go and run and gun, and then all of a sudden you're underground trying to get out of the caves. Then you're trying to save puppies from Cycro throwing them out the window. Then you're a flying salamander going through a freaking cave. Then you're flying and trying to escort a bomb to Major Mucus and everything. And this game just had a whole bunch going on for it. And then there was a game show on it. Like, my goodness, like, what more can they put into this game? But that's definitely the humor for Earthworm Jim. It's like you never know what you're gonna get. But absolutely, Earthworm Jim 2 was definitely one of my most played games as well, especially like with the first one. And I absolutely, as much as I love Earthworm Jim, the character, because like I've said, I got the action figures, I got the videotapes, I drew my own comic books, I got the comic books and everything. But Earthworm Jim, I got all 3 games. Earthworm Jim 2, as itself, definitely one of my favorites, and definitely Earthworm Jim, one of my all-time favorites as a superhero.
Number 4!
You want to talk about graphical leaps and generational leaps and generation-defining games. Look no further than Donkey Kong Country. As I've stated before, when this game came out in November '94, this was a game changer. This was one of them games that defined the generation as graphical leaps. This one was a like probably one of the biggest deals ever. The graphics on Donkey Kong Country were absolutely incredible. That was definitely one of the biggest selling points of this game. And also the gameplay and the music and just everything about it. Definitely when I saw this game, I just thought like, this looks absolutely incredible. When my dad saw it, he was blown away by it. We immediately got it because we remember seeing it through my cousin Max. And my dad was just absolutely going apeshit over it, no pun intended. And then when we finally got it, we was playing it almost nightly and everything. We was all playing it. My sisters were playing it. My mom was even playing it. And my dad was just freaking out over the graphics on it, saying like, it looks so real, it's so real. And especially like the water levels. He was blown away by the water levels. He was blown away by everything. But definitely Donkey Kong Country, definitely one of the funnest games I've played on the Super Nintendo, and definitely one of my top favorites of all time. The music was great, the characters were great, the bad guys were great, the bosses were alright, but definitely, Donkey Kong Country was definitely a swinging good time.
Number 3!
And just when you thought Donkey Kong Country was the standard bearer, out came Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest. I remember playing this with my cousin Max and Roy, and we were just absolutely fascinated with this game. Absolutely fascinated with this. You get to play Diddy, you also play his girlfriend Dixie. Now I gotta save Donkey Kong this time. I gotta save him from the pirates, and going through all the worlds on the island and everything, and then finding Captain K. Rool at the end, and then fighting the Lost Worlds and everything. This game, like I said before, just had a lot of mystery to it. Like, there's just something about this game that it felt like it was more than met the eye. And it was always had like a sense of wonder to it. Like there was something more to it than we just knew. Especially when it came to that Lost World. Like me and my cousin Max, we was like trying to figure out like how are we gonna get to this, how are we gonna get to the crocodile head and everything. I finally did that early this year. But definitely, Donkey Kong Country 2 is a great sequel to the first one. It continued on with the graphics and the gameplay, and the music was absolutely great. Probably in my top 5, maybe top 3 best soundtracks of the Super Nintendo was Donkey Kong Country Diddy's Conquest. Absolutely wonderful game. Never forget it. I did play the third one, but that was like when the Nintendo 64 was coming around. But definitely, Donkey Kong Country 2, absolutely one of my all-time favorites.
Number 2!
Now we're getting to top 2. Now, when it comes to these top 2 right here, it was very tough for me to make a decision on what was number 1 and what was number 2, because both of these games are absolutely equally great on the Super Nintendo, and definitely one of my top favorites of all time on the Super Nintendo as well. But I'm just going to go ahead and do this, because looking back on both of these games, as great as both of them are, only one of them can be number 1, and only one of them can be number 2. So with that being said, I'm just going to go and say my number 2 of my top 10 Super Nintendo games was also the very first Super Nintendo game I ever played on it, and it came with the system, and that being Super Mario World. The first time I ever played Super Mario World, it was at a friend's house from elementary school, and I went to his house. He had the Super Nintendo, and he also had Super Mario World, and that was the first time I ever played it, was at his house, and I was just absolutely mind blown by how great the game looked. And then one of my other neighbors, they had the Super Nintendo and had Super Mario World, and I was playing it over there as well. And then that's what got my mother to look into getting a Super Nintendo, and lo and behold, wound up getting it, and I've just played it ever since. If you thought Super Mario Bros. 3 on the NES was great, Super Mario World exceeded it in spades. It was leaps and bounds above anything that we've seen from Mario at that time, and especially having the cape, going through the dinosaur worlds, and definitely definitely the selling point was Yoshi. In this game, Yoshi was an instant star. But everything about Super Mario World, they had the worlds, you go through the worlds, you fight the Koopa Kids, and you finally get to Bowser at the very end to save Princess Toadstool. And also, this was one of them games that they had like alternate exits. So there was like, in some cases, there was like 2 exits that in each stage. So you could either go straight line or you can go to the different paths and find the different worlds and everything. And things like that was like really cool. Trying to find the secret exits and everything, and especially it's cool for having 2 players, because me and my wife, we did this once. She was going straight line, I was going find the secret levels, and we was always meeting up later on in the game. Things like that was fun. I gotta get that on video next time. But definitely, Super Mario World, absolutely one of my all-time favorites on the Super Nintendo. It was definitely my number 1 last time, but it's knocked down to number 2 for a reason, but I'll get to it in a little bit. But Super Mario World, definitely one of my all-time favorites, especially with Yoshi, and seeing the commercial to it just sold me on it. I absolutely wanted to play it. Well, finally got it, freaking played it, and had an absolute blast with everybody. And then especially seeing Bowser and that clown blimp. First time I saw that, I was like, wow, how are we gonna beat this? That was one of the biggest things one of my biggest wonders, like, how are we gonna beat this? And especially watching the Mario World cartoon first before I played the game. Like I said, I had an idea of what to expect in the game, especially coming from the cartoon to the game itself. And it was absolutely incredible. Mario World, definitely one of my absolute favorites of all time, and one of my absolute favorites on the Super Nintendo. I'll never forget it.
And now, number 1!
And now, my number 1 top favorite for the Super Nintendo. What could possibly have beaten Super Mario World as my number 1? It is actually pretty simple. That being Earthworm Jim. I've said this story before. The first time I ever saw this, it was me and my dad. It was for Thanksgiving 1994. Me and my dad went to some guy's house that he knew. I've never met the man before. I never saw him since then. His son had a Sega Genesis, and he had I remember he had Echo the Dolphin, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and this game. And when I went to see what he was playing, and when I saw it on the screen, it immediately captivated my attention. I just said, what is this game? I have to know what this game is. He said it was Earthworm Jim. Earthworm Jim. Wow. And I was reading the instruction manual to it. I was like absolutely fascinated with the art style to it. I was looking it up like Earthworm Jim. Wow. Other characters like Psy-Crow, Professor Monkey for a head, Evil the Cat, Major Mucus, Peter Puffy, all the freaking characters. I was absolutely mind blown. I was absolutely fascinated with these characters. I was fascinated, like, even though I just saw this like for a minute, I was absolutely blown away by it. And just watching him play the game, and I was like, I could play it, like, yeah, try it out. I was playing the game, I was like, this was absolutely incredible. And since then, I was like, I forgot the name of it, but I was like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna play that game again. And then I saw it on Nintendo Power, Earthworm Jim. Oh, Earthworm Jim's on Super Nintendo. We gotta get this. And wound up getting it. Oh, dude, that was it. I was riding that freaking rocket and everything with Earthworm Jim. Oh my god. And then they came out with a cartoon. Oh, dude. Then they had the action figures, and they started coming out with videotapes, and they had comic books and everything. Earthworm Jim, and especially with the sequel and everything, I was an Earthworm Jim junkie. I was a big Earthworm Jim fan. I was such a big fan of Earthworm Jim, I even drew my own freaking comic book. I drew the comics and everything. I drew the reference materials and everything. Just everything about it. I drew this in the whole summer vacation of 2003. Oh my god. You talk about Earthworm Jim fan, I had everything all figured out. I was playing this game with my cousin Max. I was playing with my friends Robert and Duke. I was playing with my friends Steel City and a whole bunch of other my friends from elementary school. They knew that when they saw Earthworm Jim, they thought of me. When they saw me, they thought of Earthworm Jim. And I just went hand in hand with this thing, and I was just freaking like I said, Earthworm Jim's junkie. And it was absolutely, as much as I love the Mario world, as much as I love Donkey Kong's and everything, Earthworm Jim has got to be my absolute favorite on the Super Nintendo. And definitely one of my all-time favorites. So there you have it. Dwreck's top 10 Super Nintendo games. All right here. Oh, man. And like I said, it was tough to put this thing together because there are so many great games that I've played, so many great games that I own, and games that I rented and games that I played with my cousin Max and everything, and my friends and everything from elementary school. The Super Nintendo was definitely a cool system to have, especially with the Sega Genesis as well. It was just a cool time to be a gamer, and just a cool time for practically everything at that time. But definitely, that's my top 10 Super Nintendo games. Hope y'all enjoyed it. See y'all next time, and see y'all on the flip side.